Hey guys, Chicky Domain, Debut.com with a Debut.com forecast update. This forecast update effective around 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, June 18th, 2017. And start this post off with a happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. As a father of three, I hope your day was as enjoyable as mine. Wanted to start off with a recap over what we've been talking about over the last week or so and the pattern that we recognized about 2 weeks ago that's known to produce tropical cyclone development. When we started to post on this now system that we have, 93L Invest in the Gulf of Honduras, we started talking about the two different types of patterns that was coming up that can create tropical cyclone development. One was a hooking pattern, which is area of low pressure coming out of the East Pacific, and as a front comes through and dives through, picks it up into the Western Caribbean, and that typical pattern, once it gets into the Western Caribbean, Gulf of Honduras, up the Yucatan Channel, and then straight up and then off to the right in its natural progression. Early on, the GFS model about 2 weeks ago was showing that type of pattern. The other pattern that we talked about was a round-the-corner pattern, and what we mean by that is that's a tropical wave that gets in here through the Eastern Caribbean and moves off towards the west, and the vorticity spin that's associated with the tropical wave getting in here off the coast of Costa Rica in here first, and then spinning its way up in here towards the Nicaragua-Honduran border before eventually spinning over in here into the Gulf of Honduras. Now, we're going to take you through this. This image goes back to June 12th. Okay, so this is 6 days ago, and if you start off right down here, right off Panama, as I advance the image into the 13th, here's this area of spin that's off of Costa Rica in here, and then on the 14th, it starts to raise up over Nicaragua in here, and then on the 15th, you can see it kind of upper level shear kind of blew it back over the ocean in here. Here's the spin in here. On the 16th, it is right here on the corner in here, and then on the 17th is when we get the invest yesterday, designated by the National Hurricane Center, right in here, and then leading us into today. So this is today's resolution image out of EOS-DIS, and you can see that it's a broad area of low pressure that has developed. Now I'm going to back this up for a second, and I'm going to toggle, and what I want you to do is focus in over here, that's this area that's over here by Jamaica. Toggle it back and forth, and you can see that natural progression or that shift over towards the western Gulf of Mexico. Now the GFS is still, we're using GFS as an outlier. GFS shows a more northern track into the northern Gulf of Mexico and up towards the Florida-Alabama border. We'll show you that here in just a few moments. But also interesting to note is that there's a combination of factors now, because not only is it showing us that the type pattern that we were talking about with a tropical wave moving in, we're now getting back into also a hooking pattern as area of low pressure looks like it's tried to develop in here off the East Pacific. Again, we'll back this up for you, and notice how this kicks in here off the East Pacific from there and then off to the right. So this, all of this flow is like this over the East Pacific to the northeast in here, and then wrapping around the Yucatan Channel. Now, if you've been following along, we've said from the beginning that if an area of low pressure in here passes the Yucatan Channel, there's only three directions that it can go based on the steering currents in the atmosphere. We know the system is not going to drop back down to the south, so it's coming up. And whether or not it comes up and to the left, comes up and goes straight, or comes up and goes to the right is yet to be seen. Now, the other thing that we've noticed is that, you know, yesterday we've got the designation of an invest in here, but there was a vorticity spin that was in here to the southwest of Jamaica in here, and we'll show you that in the latest imagery when we go switch you over to loops. But here is the 48-hour surface forecast out of the National Hurricane Center showing possible tropical cyclone passing just north of the Yucatan, tip of the Yucatan Peninsula. Notice where the arrow comes out of. The arrow does come out of the Yucatan Peninsula. Switch you over to the National Hurricane Center 72-hour surface forecast, and you can see that it continues it off in a northwest direction to the northwest Gulf of Mexico. Now we're going to switch you over to satellite imagery and some satellite loops. Again, the official designation of the Invest is down in here towards the Gulf of Honduras. But look how we get this spin in here, and notice how the rotation is now coming over the top of the Yucatan Channel. So chances are this system will continue to move off towards the west-northwest into the northwest Gulf of Mexico over the next 48 to 72 hours. There is an outlier, though, again, of a more straight northern movement with the GFS model. Again, looking back down in here towards the East Pacific, you can see how this hook is trying to hook back in here. And if you notice this little curvature or little vorticity spin that's in here. Once this gets up into the Gulf of Honduras, this also aids in the chance that that Invest gets a chance to tighten back up as it gets near the Yucatan Channel. One thing for sure, it's a broad area of low pressure, and a lot of times when you have this broad area of low pressure with multiple vorticity spins, it only takes one to become the dominant feature. Now, this time of the afternoon is typically when we see convection fade this early in the year, and then when we go into DMAX over the nighttime, when the waters are warmer and the air is cooler, that's when we can see that flare up back in convection, just like we've seen overnight tonight. If you saw the infrared imagery this morning, this whole area was one big ball of convection early this morning, and as we progressed through the afternoon, the cloud tops have raised up into the atmosphere and shear has taken effect. Switch you over to the latest run of the GFS model, and notice here again western tip of Cuba and the Yucatan Channel in here. And then when we go back and look at the imagery, look how much it's heavily weighted in here over the western tip of Cuba and over the Yucatan Channel versus where the Invest is down in here in the Gulf of Honduras. So this could stay stationary in here as this pinwheels into the Gulf of Mexico, and then once back over open water, this mid-level vorticity spin in here could become the dominant feature up in here in the central Gulf of Mexico, and then continue its lift off into the north, in towards the Florida border and Alabama border in here. Advance the model for you over the next 48 to 72 hours, and as you can see, the GFS wants to dominate this area over the western tip of Cuba, and then it rotates the area of low pressure through the Yucatan Channel. But look down in here in the Gulf of Honduras, it looks like it leaves the Invest down in here in the Gulf of Honduras. Advance the model a couple of more for you, and you can see how the GFS lifts this up into the northern Gulf by Wednesday and then into Thursday. Possible heavy rains coming into Florida on the eastern side of this area of low pressure. Now, we won't advance the model anymore for you. We're going to leave it right here for right now, because tomorrow will be the telltale, because the majority of this energy is going to be over in the Gulf of Mexico. And then once it gets over open water, we will be able to see where the dominance comes in as far as a main spin is concerned here. That's all we got for you now, guys. Follow us on our social feeds. That's where we put our real-time updates. So when the models first come out, that's where we're posting our stuff. Follow us on Twitter at Dadabuh. That's D-A-D-A-B-U-H. On Facebook, Dabuh, D-A-B-U-H. And on Instagram at Dabuh Surf. Thanks for following. Stay tuned for the next update.